Many Constant Worlds is a meta-disjointed journey through the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. I'm Kat, she, her, and currently the most interesting thing about me is I have a busted blood vessel in my left eye.
I'm Taryn, they, them, and I didn't put it there. Might have put it there, but not like physically.
Yeah, I think it was too much screen time. You know, I worked and then I edited an episode, so I just spent all day staring at a computer.
Don't pretend like Baldur's Gate didn't have anything to do with it.
I only played Baldur's Gate for like an hour that night because I went between work and freaking like
you
editing.
You did work and editing, and then you played Baldur's Gate. All of those things combined made for a day of nothing but screen time. I'm not advocating for less Baldur's Gate. I'm advocating for less of everything else.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we have many constant lobsters looking for new episodes.
Yeah, that's fair. We're gonna feed you lobs. We're gonna feed you lobsters. We gotta get you fat and juicy and lobstery. I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I don't eat lobster. I don't know what makes a good lobster. Those are good lobster qualities, right?
I think you know what? The only time I think you've had a lobster is the same time I had a lobster, and I don't think either of us were wildly impressed, but we tried lobster.
Well, you know what? It's a good thing that we don't eat lobsters because we love the lobsters. We love all of our mini constant lobsters.
That's why you're able to be constant and mini.
Yeah, we're never gonna put you screaming into a pot and eat. That is the most fucked up way.
Horrifying.
Like, why can't you kill them first? Chefs out there. I understand the need for freshness in your seafood, but legitimately, why can't you kill them first? I understand that they're not actually screaming. It's supposed to be like steam escaping the shells or whatever. But that also sounds like a load of bullshit. Explain to me. Explain. I'm doing the meme, the tapping the laptop meme. Explain why we can't kill things before we consume or before we cook. That's so Does the terror make the meat better? I wouldn't know. I eat other meats. I just don't like sea bugs.
I mean, you do like shrimp.
Yeah, that's fair.
We've finally gotten you to a place where shrimp is acceptable.
That's different. I don't think about them being sea bugs. I don't know. I doubt I eat real shrimp. We can't afford real shrimp.
I'm more bothered that any bug is as big as a lobster.
Right? The ocean is
terrifying
and wonderful, but
this is why we don't go to the ocean.
I wish we could go to the,
You can do that. I'm gonna stay away from the fucking ocean. It's made it pretty clear it wants nothing to do with humans, okay?
It does. We shouldn't be, out in the middle of it. We're allowed to be on, the edge of it.
Are we, though?
Yeah, it gave us food, I don't like it, but other people love it. It gives food, it gives us pretty things. It feels really good to stand with your feet in.
I mean, until something that has burrowed into the sand that washed up from the ocean, comes for you.
Yeah, you don't stand in it for that long. That's the hubris. It's really nice to look at. It makes good noises. The
ocean is gorgeous, but terrifying.
Yes, so are the mountains, and we live there.
You know what? I feel more capable on the mountains, I think, because, just breathing the air isn't going to kill me.
That's because your people are from there, and that's because there is no air in the mountains. There's no air to breathe there. You're high on the lack of the air. And I'd like to point out that 20 miles away, not even, it's famous for people freezing and dying and having to eat each other because there was no food.
Also, 20 miles away is where Paul Sheldon crashed because the film was made in Truckee and Carson.
How dare you try to end this argument by weaving it back around to the subject at hand. I see you. I know what you're doing.
Anyways, so I will spoiler something, which is that this episode is pre-recorded because guess what, Taryn? This episode's going to come out after you leave Reno.
Finally, for other actually, I don't think it's in the mountains, but yeah, near mountains. I will never escape mountains.
So for social media, it gets kind of weird. It's fine.
Yeah, don't worry about
We
it.
haven't been hacked.
No, like, it probably looks weirder. Like, it's probably looked weirder in the past, like, couple months.
Yeah, pretty much. It's fine. You know what? We are fitting this in around living our lives.
Yeah. A
So,
little bit. Yeah, I'm gonna leave the country for the first time.
woo!
I'm very excited. I'm not going to Maine. I think I go over Maine.
I would assume so.
Yeah, well,
Seems like going the other direction would be a terrible idea.
I'm visiting family in Switzerland, just to be clear, which you would never guess I had family in Switzerland by anything else about me.
I mean, you are super white.
Yeah, that's fair. I am the color of Switzerland. I can't argue with that. But, yeah, I think I go over so I can look down and I can see the home of the lobster. Keep saying that. I'm starting to second guess myself about whether or not that's actually where lobster's from.
I mean, Maine lobster is a big deal.
Okay.
So, like, that is a thing. I don't know. That's where, like, all the lobsters are from.
No, I don't.
Lots of places got lobsters.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think it's because I listened to a whole thing about, like, oysters in New York. And then, like, crabs are from Maryland. Lobsters are... Yeah, they're in a lot of places. Oh, it doesn't matter. Lobsters are here right now listening to us.
Yeah. So, we fully support trigger warnings and taking care of your own mental health. Here are the trigger warnings for this book and thus this episode because we are still reading it and it's a very triggering book.
I'm so sorry. We're never going to get out of it.
We're getting there. So, here we go. Child death, racial slurs, racism, death, bullying, child abuse, sexual content, murder, violence, domestic abuse, homophobia, homophobic slurs, gore, suicide, fat phobia, animal cruelty, and death, anti-Semitism, misogyny, pedophilia, sexual assault, and honestly, so much more. And I also really want to preface this. In the section we are reading, there is a dog death very early on, and it's also fairly explicit.
Yeah, it's fucked.
Yeah.
It's super fucked. Can we add poor editing to the list of trigger
I mean,
warnings,
you
too?
did rant about that, I think, in, like, the second episode we did on it, so...
I'm never going to stop.
No, you're not.
I'm never going to stop. I just want to add it to the list that goes at the beginning of each episode at this point.
I will try to remember to add it.
It's bad every time.
I'm making a note.
Thank you. I think I have to cling to it because the dog death was bad.
Oh my god, yeah, that... I even warned you about it because
Yeah, I
you hadn't
remember.
started reading it yet.
Yeah, to nobody's surprise, I generally finish after Kat finishes.
No,
So.
you've been ahead on this one so far.
Yeah, but not...
Not this time. This time you were not.
I have been ahead sometimes. Usually I am not ahead. I got ahead with this one. I got very, like, take charge through the surgery haze. It's easy when you're sitting there and you have literally nothing else to do. And then I went right back, like what's the phrase the young kids say, like, back on my shit?
I don't know. I'm not a young kid. I wouldn't know.
No, that's fair. I think it's around in that realm, and that perfectly describes me.
All right, let's do this. God. You know what? I still feel better than having to do the mist.
I used to, but guess what? The mist was one. And we're still...
You know what it is? I feel like personally I've reached that point where I'm just like real sick of this book now.
Exactly. Yes. I'm so tired of dairy. I just want the freedom to be anywhere else. I have been cheating on Stephen King. I've been reading James Clavell's Shogun, which is another, like, 1,000+ page book in between reading these sections. Do you know how nice it is to be most of the way done with that book in, like, a week? Because I'm allowed to just...
Read it? Yeah.
I can just read it. The lobsters might already be done with this book. Have you thought of that?
No, I did.
But we're trapped. We're trapped in a prison of our own making.
I mean, that sounds like being human. That is the most human experience I can think of, in fact.
Yeah. It's a very Stephen King place to be, I feel like.
So we read part 4, chapters 13 through 15. Because these things are so long. We only read 3 chapters. Part 4 starts out with Bill being a creep while he waits for Mike to finish up some librarian stuff. Then the Losers Club all comes together to drink before the fight begins. People are starting to remember things, and it's a lot to be slammed with, years of forgotten trauma because you gotta fight a monster. This bleeds into the past Losers Club, and once again, we are back in 1958. All of the kids reflect on Henry Bowers and how they must have been his most hated adversary. And the one with the weakest reason would have to be Bill. Literally, he sees and hears the stories of his friends that his friends are telling about why Henry goes after them, and somehow still has the self-centered belief that he is the one Henry hates the most. Henry killed Mike's dog. No, Bill. No. Anyways, we do have that unfortunate knowledge that Henry killed Mike's dog.
I'm gonna give Bill, Bill has a trauma that the others don't have. Dog or not, Bill had a trauma young that the others don't have in losing a sibling. Having 3 of them, and they're all much younger than me, I don't like to even imagine what that would be like to lose a sibling. And we both know what that grief haze is like, and anybody else who knows what that grief haze is like, you feel a little extra targeted. Anything that happens after that, especially in those first couple years after a big, sudden loss like that, feels bigger, feels much more targeted. And with his parents being as fucking shitty as they are, I'm not shocked that Bill still feels very it was at me, because he needed something. He needed a target for his own bad feelings, I feel like.
Yeah.
But no, Henry killed Mike's dog. I want to feel bad for Henry Bowers, and that was the moment that it just went away. Kid or not. Fuck Henry Bowers. If there's a question of who is the worst in any Stephen King book, we got to find another dog killer to try to figure that out, because right now he's at the top of my fucking list.
Well, I mean, we haven't gotten to Cujo yet.
That's different. Cujo is like an old Yeller situation.
That's true.
Cujo was bad. I cannot talk about what happened with Henry Bowers and the dog. He got that dog's trust.
He did, yeah. Anyways, we're gonna move on because it is a horrible fucking scene.
Yeah,
it is bad. And what's worse is that Henry holds on to this info so he can deliver it at the most painful moment he can to Mike. Henry's a piece of shit. He associates being racist with a good quality because it's the only time his father rewarded him with
alcohol.
Anything.
So much alcohol consumption in this book, and I have to keep reminding myself that it's the mid-'80s. And that while alcoholism was a thing and was recognized, there's still this level of alcohol consumption that it was just different. Everything was just different.
There is a greater focus on Mike through these chapters. He is really the final person that the Losers Club needs. The kids come together over a massive rock fight against Bowers and his friends who have been chasing down Mike.
Sorry, have you seen those memes that are something at 100% power and then something at 99% power and it's one person? That feels a little bit like Losers Club at 100% power.
Yeah.
Losers Club at 99% power and it's just Mike.
Yeah. I mean, Mike really does do a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Both Henry's gang and the Losers had been heading off to set off fireworks, ironically, which I just thought was interesting. They both went to deal with fireworks. And they met in the middle, and that was Mike. It is noted that Mike realized years later that Henry's actions may not have been in his own control, because if Henry and his buddies had gotten to Mike first, would that have cost the Losers the fight with it in the end. It's repeated that it's the 7 of them. They need to defeat it, which is why in 85 it is such a concern that Stan isn't there. So with Mike, we have a completed coven or quartet. In 85, Mike notes that there is a stitching of the past and the present, forming a wheel that must turn.
Cause a wheel.
Cause a wheel.
Cause a wheel. I think that'll be interesting too when we get to the drawing of the 3, because of the way that there are other characters who will have to have, like, time and space and things, like, stitched together that way, too. But I just... Cause a wheel. And cause also a bitch. But...
Yeah. Back in 58, Mike shares his experiences with it as in the capital I, it, with the club, including bringing his father's old photo album. Here, Pennywise tries to reach out to them in a photo, but the place covering, like, you know how you have film covering a fancy photo album? Yeah, it prevents it from, like, doing that. Always use protection!
Oh my god.
Mike had previously mentioned that it feeds on kid stuff. So this was particularly interesting. We have essentially a cosmically powerful being who is stopped by photo album plastic that can easily tear. But if we put ourselves in the mind of a kid like Mike, who is in possession of his father's photo album, and we set that against Georgie's album, which had no plastic cover on the photos because it's not something a child of like 6 would consider that they need to protect their photos. Mike knows the pictures have value because some are quite old, so a kid would look at that album and the plastic barrier as a boundary one must not cross. Even when they're looking at it, they note they can't touch the photos because there is a protective layer. The value which they put on that plastic film covering may have saved them from it in that moment because this is just fucked up Peter Pan. But the things you believe take hold and have power. Anyway, so they have a clubhouse that Ben has designed, and they all worked on digging that is underground, because, you know, who doesn't want a clubhouse in the ground?
I mean, it feels more safe than in the trees, and kids are kind of notorious for digging holes.
Yeah.
It's just a big hole.
Admittedly, like, again, I think we started our It series with me sharing my, like, kindergarten's efforts to find the Ninja Turtles in a manhole that we were uncovering in the playground.
Yeah. It is, it is going to be a lot easier to camouflage, too. I feel like there's a lot of reasons why you could build it in the ground and not somewhere else. It's smart to me. I like the idea of the clubhouse that's underground.
Fair enough. And it does work for them. I mean, it's a very successful clubhouse.
Yeah.
In 85, it leaves a message for the losers by way of a young Stan's head and some balloons taunting them. Also, Richie's eyes keep burning and he finally remembers why. They performed a ritual called the smoke hole back in 58. He and Mike receiving visions of the arrival of it. The ritual was to burn green wood, and the last individuals still sitting there getting smoked out should have visions of what to do next. Ben had learned about it while reading about indigenous tribes. Bill muses that Ben was meant to find that book, and it leads him down a thought hole of how much free will they actually possess and how much they're actually being controlled by something else.
Which seems like a problem since their beliefs drive so much of what's happening.
Yeah.
If you start to believe that if you start to believe that you don't have free will and things are just going to go how they're going to go, that's going to become an issue, I think. But if you also believe that it is your fate then to destroy the thing, maybe that is going to end up being a good thing.
Maybe. Bill does, muse that there is comfort in that lack of control, much like a parent making sure that their kids are taken care of. Not that he would know what that was like, since his parents failed on so many parts.
Sorry, no, I'm just thinking back to that whole, fate and duty, this is how much free will do we actually have. It ties back into Roland.
Yeah.
And Roland's what we just found out, back when we were reading anything else. What he just found out, this kind of idea that, you're going to the Dark Tower whether you want to or not. This is just what will be, will be.
Yeah.
This is your quest. This is what's happening. And Roland's kind of like, no, but I want to. And it's like, no, but that's why you want to. You want to because you have to. Like, there's no, like, you are the person who will do this.
Yeah.
This is your fate. This is Ka. This is what's going to happen. And so I think it's interesting that we're seeing that theme again. This theme of, like, how much free will do we actually have here? How much is this kind of already pre-written that this is, you found what you needed to find for all of this to happen, because how much of this is just what's gonna happen? And we're just kind of walking this path because we're walking this path.
Which is very much, I feel like, a thing that Stephen King likes to do. Like, he likes to, I don't know if that's quite breaking the fourth wall, but he, in a way, likes to always sort of throw away to that, like, this is just your destiny. This is what's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, this is what Stephen King has set out for you, and he is your god.
Considering how meta he will get later, and he does get very meta later.
That's why this is a meta disjointed journey.
with the knowledge that these are characters being written, and this is a story that's being written and must be written. I think you have a good point that this is destiny, because this is what's, like, I am putting this down. They have no choice. They will be drawn to the end because this is the end that I am taking them to.
Yeah.
There is only one end because there's only one end. And, you, dear reader, will only see them to one end because the end is it's already printed. It's at the end of this book.
And Stephen King is well aware of the fact that he sucks at endings.
Yeah.
He makes enough jokes about it. He knows he struggles with an ending. So the question becomes, who is controlling the losers? Ka, the White, King, it?
The bike.
So the losers sit in their clubhouse burning green wood. They leave in the following order: Stan, Ben, Eddie, Bev, and Bill. Mike and Richie remain and receive a vision of the Barrens and what they describe as the ago, long before the area was filled with more than maybe animals at best.
The long, long ago. The before time.
They see it falling from the sky in what isn't really a spaceship or a meteor, but they lack other words for what they see. A fire starts from the impact, and the place it made was the Barrens and downtown Derry. They report their visions back to the group, who have pulled them out when they heard the boys screaming. Bill and Ben struggled to find them because they'd gone looking for them, and it was like they weren't there, and the clubhouse had gotten bigger, which just led me to hear in my head the man in black telling Roland that it was the size that gets you when it comes to the universe.
That's fair. That's interesting. My brain went to the TARDIS, which
I also did reading it, but I'm also like, no, I mean, it's the size that gets you.
Yeah.
Because they kept arguing about, like, did it get bigger in here? Like, it's not, like, we're so close to each other, like, we're touching knees to even do this.
Yeah.
We're crammed in here. It's not this big. But also, it seemed so much bigger. And I mean, that's just something that happens even as you become an adult from being a kid. You go into a space that you used to occupy when you were much smaller.
Yeah.
And it feels so tiny. You wonder, like, it seemed so much bigger. And you know what? Part of that's because children have imaginations and adults have had that beaten out of them.
Yeah.
So we can't imagine space to be bigger than the space that it actually is.
So what you need to do is get a cardboard box, get in, like, a big one, like as big as you can find, and get in it, and then just start thinking of things. And eventually it will come back to you.
Yeah.
If you're claustrophobic, like, maybe find alternatives, or just don't close the top. Make sure you have a light. Because otherwise all you're going to think of is a coffin, and then it becomes a problem. But no, I agree. Size has been played with a lot already in this book. I think that King was very on that idea of like it's the size that gets you.
Yeah.
Because he's playing with a lot of size perspective, I think.
Like the giant bird.
Yeah, especially like that's the first thing that comes to mind for me is like the giant bird. I think that humans, we probably have innate like inside of us, we used to fight very big things. Those very big things are gone. I think we probably still have the very far back of our brains some fear of like large things.
There's a reason I'm terrified of Megalodon.
Which is fair.
This is why I don't go in the ocean.
And we tend to be bigger than a lot of what's around us. And if we're not, we don't like just unprotectedly go around it. It was a smart way to play on horror.
Yeah.
We saw it in The Mist a lot. A lot of what was scary about The Mist was just things that...
Giant bug.
Exactly. Giant bug. And the giant bug, it makes it like we don't have a strategy to fight giant bug. We don't know how to deal with that because we're used to tiny bug.
Except for lobsters, which are disturbingly large, and whatever the hell's going on in Australia.
Australians are different. Like, he couldn't put an Australian into The Mist. They'd have known what they were doing.
He would have.
That's why none of them are Australian. They'd have been like, this is... I'm not doing an Australian accent. I'm not fucking crazy. They'd have been like, I don't, like, this is nothing. Have you seen the huntsman spider? You guys are freaking out for absolutely nothing.
You know what? Spider's a great example, too, because, like, a teeny tiny spider can still kill you because it's so fucking poisonous. And you could squish it.
Exactly. As long as you see it, you can squish it, and you're good. But I also remember growing up, and there were always stories about how, don't do that because it's going to let off a pheromone and then all the other ones are going to come and get you. And then it becomes the size of like the hunting party that's coming for you. And that's terrifying in a totally different way.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Like, but it's still size. It's always size. It's very insightful.
And it is good enough. It's better than The Mist. It's still probably one of the better books that we've read so far.
It's definitely got better as we've got in. There's just a lot that I feel like could have been shaved.
Yes.
And
it's also still a monument of its time.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if in the 80s I'd be saying, oh, so much of this could have been shaved off. You have to have the things that came after it to really look at it and go, I feel like this would have been a lot more suspenseful if this wasn't being repeated so many times.
Yeah.
But I know that because I've read, the Odd Thomas books, and I've read other Dean Koontz books, which are not as, which aren't as word heavy. Or I've read, I can't think of other things that are really like suspenseful or scary coming off of it. I think Dean Koontz is really the one that stands out to me because I've always heard Dean Koontz described as like Stephen King, but if it wasn't as like just wordy, like without the needless description. And I really have to agree.
I've only read so much of Dean Koontz, but I can see it. I finished Nosferatu, which is Joe Hill's book. And I can say like he writes a lot like his dad. You can tell his dad influenced his writing. He is very wordy, but I feel like he is more effective with his words.
Yeah.
But maybe that's also a monument of this time, because that book came out, I want to say, in like 2012. So it's not the same as going back as far as 85. And I was alive in 2012. I wasn't alive in 85. I don't know what it was really like.
I do wonder if it's also... we have more entertainment options. Like, just the difference in the amount of channels that we have between 85 and now. Let's not even talk about streaming. But TV channels and the way that we access those channels.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not even talking about streaming. I'm just talking about Like, in 85, you used a TV guide. If you missed your show, what were you doing that night? You were looking for something else to watch, or you're picking up a book.
Yeah.
And I think a length might have... of course, there's always going to be maybe a premium on, like, dime store length, like quick reads. There's always going to be people who want to be able to rip through a book real quick. I'm not trying to say that there's not, but I think that people who really, like, if that is a legitimate option, like I want to read or I want to watch TV, you know, let's not even talk about the internet coming up now. If you're choosing between those two things, having something that's meatier and that you can really get into probably was a lot better at the time. Whereas now, you need to get what you're saying out.
Yeah.
You need to just get it done because there's too many other options. Like, there's too much. Like, now let's bring the internet into it. You've got fan fiction. You've got free books. I mean, there's always been the library, but you can literally access it. Like, I can access free books on my phone, Kindles, other e-readers. There are so many ways to access shit. If I get a few pages into your book and I'm not into it, getting into this and getting this far into the book and finally being like, yeah, you know, it's pretty good. Like, I'm into it. The suspense has built. I don't think it would survive now.
No, I don't think so either.
I'm sure that having this name on it certainly helped back then. But I don't think that it would survive even with Stephen King's name on it now.
No, and I wonder how much of that is actually the reality behind people's like, well, he's not as good since he got off drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
As much as it's like, no, books just needed to change. It's a very different kind of book.
Yeah. Like, I want to be able to go faster. And I think that's a lot of my criticism with, like, why are we repeating?
Yeah.
It's like, I got that. I understood this. I don't need it repeated, like, 3 more times to understand that, like, Ben is fat. Or that Beverly's abused. Or that Mike is magical. Like, I don't need the same scenario repeated. But if I'm not just trying to, like, rip through the book, I'll bring up the book that I'm reading again. I'll bring up Shogun again. It's similar, where I'm having a lot of repeated motifs.
Yeah.
That just wouldn't, it feels like that shit would have to get cut now. Like, a lot of repeated conversations and a lot of repeated things. And it does feel like in older books that was just, it made the world richer. And now there's other things that make the world much, like, it's realistic. People do that. I don't care. I can fill that in with my own brain. I don't need that. I don't need that to be so explicit. I can fill that in implicitly. I don't need Stephen King to tell me like 40 times. I can figure it out.
No, I agree, because that was always one of the problems I had with Stephen King and not reading him when I was younger, was he was so fucking wordy. I never really pegged the, like, how much he repeats himself. What always got me, it's the same thing I had issues with Anne Rice, of like, I don't need 3 pages telling me what a dresser looks like. I don't care. I don't care how the dresser looks. I don't even care that the dresser is there. Please, for the love of God, just continue your story. Stop describing this dresser or this door or this, like, blanket. I don't need this info.
I haven't reread Anne Rice in a really long time. I love the 90s Interview with the Vampire movie. Tom Cruise notwithstanding. Tom Cruise is fucking made for the Lestat role.
You know what? I
do
not care for Tom Cruise. You know my deep-rooted dislike of Tom Cruise, but fuck, that man is a good actor.
Yes.
He really is, and I hate admitting it, but he is.
He is. That role is a whole other world of Tom Cruise. Yeah. And Brad Pitt as Louis, I've been trying to make myself sit down and watch the AMC new one. It looks amazing. I'm very excited for it. Season 2 comes out soon. It comes out in like May. So I'm like, I need to watch it. It's really hard. Like, it's different from the movie. It's so hard because the movie's such a fucking masterpiece. I was really trying not to drop another F-bomb. I can't help it. It's such a fucking masterpiece that trying to, like, watch them do it again, even though I'm of the impression it has much more explicit, like, LGBT shit in it, which is wonderful. She was not even explicit enough, I think, in the book. Because Anne Rice, well,
we're not getting into that.
We need a whole podcast for Anne Rice and that shit. But I have to agree, like, she's very wordy. I don't remember that. I read Anne Rice the same time I read this stuff.
Yeah.
The same time I read The Dark Tower, and I haven't really reread it since. It's probably the same. I don't remember. I do think it's probably better, but given it was written at the same time, it's probably a lot the same of just repeating the same kind of motifs, because I have a feeling that was just what was kind of said. Quite frankly, Tolkien does it.
Yep.
All of them do it, where they're just, I'm going to hit you over the head with what the purpose of this is. And I don't know about you, but I still remember in 6th grade having a class in reading on scanning, on how to scan books and how to scan passages, and that being a way to read faster. Like, literally being taught how to scan to read faster, because that's how, like, that was just the next step in reading.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that has something to do with it. I wonder if they're not really teaching people to do that as much now. People just did that so much more that it was like, I will catch you somewhere. If you're just scanning this, you'll see it along the way somewhere. Like, I don't know. It's just weird. It's so weird to me. I think it's what makes things feel dated.
Yeah, I think so too. Derry is a very racist place. In fact, the Bob Gautier, I don't know. He even explains to Mike how the N-word isn't a bad word because, you know, his dad uses it and his dad's not a bad man and all of that garbage. I'm not necessarily here to talk about that bit. I just wanted to draw attention to the reuse of the name Bob and what this particular character is telling Mike, of all people. Because remember that the name that Pennywise gives to Georgie in the sewer is Bob Gray. And there's other things I want to mention about Bob Gray. So we have the Man in Black. We have Ralph White. We have Ralph Dugan, which the first part of it means black. Now we have Bob Gray, just our black and white together. Just interesting.
Yeah.
And to have Bob Gautier be the one who's trying to explain that he's not racist.
Do in French, can that not also be like of or like from?
I think so, yeah.
The reason I'm asking is because Gan, G-A-N, is very important. And I know Mike has already mentioned the turtle. Mm-hmm. The turtle couldn't help us or something.
Yeah.
Gan is, I'm not trying to give spoilers, but Gan is a turtle, basically. Okay. That's why I'm kind of, wait. Like, Dugan, like, could that not also be, like...
No, I think that's a good observation, because that's... Dugan is how Ralph's last name is spelled, which is an actual last name. That's why I was able to look up. The is actually, the source is black, which I only remember from those Karen Marie Moning books. But I did look it up to confirm. But I think that's interesting. That probably was a lot more calculated. Yeah. Because even if it is meant to use that do as in black, also, if we were to take it from that, if you do know something like that, because, you know, Misery comes out in like 87. Next thing I also want to point out is like smoke and visions is something that humans have done for a long time. And obviously smoke inhalation is bad. It will kill you. Don't fucking just do it. This was super risky for these kids. But, you know, they They were trying to engage in alternative thought to try and solve their problem. And I do support that. It just was crazy dangerous. Please do not try. But I do also want to point out that Greek oracles actually would burn bay leaves to help give them their visions. Bay leaves in general are used to help with astral travel. So I kind of figured this is working similar here, especially because it had to be green wood in particular, which means it probably had some sort of moss growing on it.
Yeah.
And the thing is that like when you burn a bay leaf, there's actually like a carcinogenic in it thing. And that's why like it's not super safe to do this. Don't just do it. Be very careful if you're gonna burn some bay leaves. But yeah, that's how like the oracles in Greece would have their visions.
That's interesting. Yeah, I do appreciate the like, don't just burn things and then breathe in the smoke. That's smart. Like, make sure you know what you're burning. Make sure it's from a safe source.
Yeah.
We're not even going to go into like ethical sourcing, just safe sourcing. Yeah. It's up to you if you want to be ethical.
Please be ethical.
I mean, yeah, please, but like, that's just us asking you to please be ethical, but like
be safe no matter what.
Yeah, we demand that you be safe. We ask that you be ethical.
Yeah. And respectful. Content warning. Taryn is about to discuss the Atlanta child murders. As you may guess from that title, there's going to be upsetting content, including child death, racism, and homophobia. Please take care of yourselves, and if you need to skip this, please jump to 59 minutes. To those listening through, just a reminder, we are not a true crime podcast. Our information is to help understand the reference made in it, and is only a brief look into this horrible series of murders. I believe, Taryn, you have done some research for us.
Oh, God.
On a reference made in the previous section that we read regarding the Atlanta child murders.
Yeah, I did. I have a very special way that I want to start this out. It's the only way that I could think to start this out. I looked into this deeply and yeah, so give me just a second.
No problem.
The only way that I could think to express my feelings about all this after having looked into this was this way, and I'm going to step back from the mic for it. I really hope that on the recording won't be too bad.
I mean, I see the spikes, but we'll see. They're not sometimes we laugh louder than that, so.
Fantastic. Oh, boy. It's bad. It's real bad. I talked about John Wayne Gacy, and that was bad. This is so much worse. Hence, the only way that I could get my feelings out about it. And if any of you look into it, you're going to probably feel this way too. When we talk about Derry being racist, King had inspiration. The Atlanta child murders happened between 1979 and 1981, I want to say. I couldn't make notes. I wanted to make notes. I tried to make notes. I couldn't make notes. This is coming off the top of my head because every time I tried to make notes, that was what happened. There is a fantastic documentary on HBO where they talk to the families of the 29 confirmed missing and murdered Black children and young men.
Jesus.
In that time. Oh, yeah. If you Google it, you will find that the FBI has made their files. They've declassified them for like the Freedom of Information Act. It was just bad. It took so many dead kids for the FBI to care. The FBI actively was trying to not get involved. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation was actively trying to not get involved. Pretty much because it was poor black kids. And you can see that. They made notes. They don't say that. But it says that.
Yeah.
The mayor of Atlanta at the time, Maynard Jackson, had to go to the press. He had to go to the president at the time to get them involved. And at that point, there was 10 or 12 kids confirmed, I think that was bodies.
Was there an age range that they kind of targeted?
No, that's what was. So the youngest was, I want to say 7.
Okay.
Between 7 or 9, and the oldest, when there was finally an arrest, the oldest was 28. The person who has been arrested and convicted, many of the families don't think actually did it. His name is Wayne Williams. If you go on his Wikipedia, there's a lot of information. I don't know where I fall with it. It is a tragedy.
Yeah.
It made me ashamed. Because as you said, I'm very white. My family is not from Georgia. My family's newish, but to the States, but we were certainly here in the late 70s and early 80s, and it made me really disgusted with just my people. It's gross. And I don't understand why I listen to so many true crime podcasts, and I don't know why not a single one of them has ever covered this. There's so much information out there that I legitimately could not go through it all, because we are not a true crime podcast. We're a Stephen King podcast. We're a Dark Tower podcast. And I couldn't go through it all. I couldn't digest it all. But I listen to big true crime podcasts who have never covered this. And I don't understand. They've covered big hitters. They've covered small time things. And this has never been talked about. And considering the documentary I watched, it doesn't seem like the families aren't wanting it discussed. So I'm really confused and really it was depressing. As far as how it ties into what we are reading, there were a couple girls. Mostly it was young men and boys. Literal boys. The people in power really didn't care. The police at the time were overwhelmed. What police did care had to really walk a fine line. It was a very racist and homophobic. That's the other thing, is there are people who believe that the person who did it was gay, and that's why there's just a lot. There's so much information to dig through. But it is very clear, especially since Stephen King calls the Atlanta child murders out.
Yeah.
Directly. And, he calls out one fictional thing and one real thing. It is clear he's very inspired. I don't like using the term inspired. I think he was probably also disgusted because there was so much media.
He was very impacted by it, because this is the book where he lists his children's ages at the front.
Yeah.
And I can imagine, especially because he has 2 sons, if it was largely boys, the idea of someone taking his children, because, Owen was, I think, 3.
Yeah.
The youngest. And then I think Naomi was the oldest at 14, and Joe was in the middle. That's going to be horrifying for a parent.
Oh, yeah. And these kids were just disappearing. There were people that they talked to who were kids at the time who were now they were in Atlanta. They were talking about how the culture entirely changed around being a kid at the time and having to learn to don't talk to people, don't get in cars, even if it's someone you know, go straight home, lock your doors. And I think the fact that Stan and his wife moved to Atlanta at the beginning of the book as well, and won't have kids, like none of them will have kids. Obviously that has plot reasons as well. I think you're right, impacted is really the right word. He's very impacted, I think. You can see how he has poured it out onto the paper.
You know what's interesting is where he calls that out, of all places, is it's Beverly talking about, like, well, if stuff like this were happening in Derry, like these children are being murdered or disappearing, if that was really happening, wouldn't it be a media thing, like the Frank Dodson stuff, like the Atlanta child murders? And it's so sad that it sounds like the mayor had to, like, take it upon himself to even make it a media thing, because even though, like, Beverly is referring to it as like, oh, see, it was picked up, it wasn't. It was pushed out there, and nobody's pushing it in Derry.
Yeah.
But even the Atlanta child murders had to be pushed out there for anybody to even know that it was happening.
And how they put it in the documentary is that it had to be pushed to the mayor to get the mayor even involved. And then he finally starts pushing. And the pushback the mayor got from the FBI, from the GBI and from the FBI, there's notes in the FBI files where they're not only talking about how the mayor's so emotional about it, but that the director, it was either the director or the deputy director of the entire FBI at the time, had a call with the mayor, with Mayor Jackson, legitimately told him, there's notes on this. The FBI's own notes literally told this guy, like, you can't keep talking poorly about us in the news if you want our help. We're not going to promise you how much help or what help we're going to give you, but you can't keep talking poorly about us if you want our help. It makes our job bad if you keep going to the news and saying that we're not doing anything to help you. And this was, I want to say like 16 months, 18 months after the murders had started, or it was 16 disappearances and like 10 bodies. I can't remember the exact numbers.
And these started in 79, right?
I want to say 79. It was 78 or 79.
So just before he starts writing it.
Yeah. Yeah. In the documentary, in the HBO documentary, they speak to a reporter who was reporting on it in Atlanta, who talks about how exactly what you're saying, that it should have been a media thing, but that it took so many kids to be gone, like to be missing, and then bodies to start showing up before the media even cared. Yeah. There was just no, it's pretty much like Derry and this are such a close, like, comparison. I think what's really shocking is that Atlanta is so big. Even at the time, Atlanta was a city.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, like, Derry is written as this little hole-in-the-wall place. Having grown up in a hole-in-the-wall place, I wouldn't, like, you'd expect eventually, if you've got bodies and bodies and missing kids, sure, even national attention eventually is going to get turned on you. Atlanta's a city. It's a major city. And I don't understand, like, they kept comparing what was happening to, like, the Lindbergh baby.
Yeah.
I wondered this, and I brought this up to you as I was looking at things. I was right. The Lindbergh baby did change the laws where the FBI has to get involved as soon as it's crossing state lines, or there's, that changed the laws. The FBI was still just trying to not get involved. So the Lindbergh baby keeps getting brought up, and they're going, hey, this one rich white kid goes missing. The whole country goes nuts. All of these poor black kids are going missing, and nobody gives a shit. I can't.
It's disgusting. Just to clarify, so we have like 29 confirmed, or at least attributed to.
So I think currently the number is 32.
32.
But 29 at this documentary, I think, was done in like 2020.
Okay.
I think now it's like 32 because they're finding more and they're attributing more. And also now, I do think they've run some DNA, and they've found DNA that actually points to the person that they have in prison. But of course, like, the state never wants to admit that they've made a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah.
The federal government even less so.
So okay.
I have feelings.
So my question here is, did they find any bodies, or are we just missing and never seen again? Not even so much as like anything for these families to be put at peace.
Out of that number,
yeah,
there have been bodies found. I don't remember off the top of my head how many.
That's fine. I was just kind of curious if any, or if we're all just literally no one got any peace from this at all.
Oh, bodies being found was part of what finally got a little bit of media attention. Bodies being found was how they started to link it, that it actually was all the same.
So that is a huge number, and it is one of the possibilities that there are multiple people.
Yes.
Okay.
That is, even with the person that they have in prison, the people who worked the case, there were people who, of those special agents, there were people who thought that it couldn't possibly be one person. There's people, like victims' families, who are sure that it couldn't have been one person. There are serial killers who have racked up numbers like that and higher, but it's rare. Or at least rare as far as we know, as far as people who've been caught and people who...
Yeah.
Now, like in today's day and age, they don't talk about serial killers and the numbers that they have and things. They don't want to glorify it.
Yeah.
They don't want to make these people into celebrities, because that's what serial killers, that's part of what they're going for.
That's what they want.
We would rightly have no idea.
Yeah.
Finding bodies was part of what started to push towards anything being done.
Do any of the families have anything like set up that we can put like description into, like a link or something, anything that could support them?
There used to be, when this first was going on, the mother of the youngest victim being Yusuf Bell, the mother, Camille Bell, had started the committee to stop, it's left me, if it was the committee to stop the murder of children or the committee to stop children's murders. That has since gone defunct. Oh. I will have to look, and we can put it in the description.
Yeah, if we find anything, we will drop it in.
But we will find it, because it's disgusting.
It is disgusting.
I cannot suggest enough. We will also put the name of the HBO documentary, because I had just found it. If you just search like the Atlanta child murders on Max, of course.
All comes back to Max.
You will find it. But if you also just Google the Atlanta child murders, and you don't just look at Wikipedia, which you also can, Wiki's great. The FBI has a separate website called like the Vault or something, but I went to it through the FBI's website. It is their thing where they put up their FOIA and FOIPA files. You can dig through them. There are hundreds of pages. Hundreds and hundreds of pages. It's everything that they have, because they don't want you to go through it. And there's duplicates and there's tons. Just look. If you have the time and you have the gumption, look. If you listen to true crime podcasts, ask them why they haven't covered this. Because if they're covering true crime, there's tons of... You can find it. It's out. It's online. The FBI has put it up themselves. Go look. It's right there. They can look. They have the time and they get paid for it. Why haven't they covered this? It's there.
Before I forget, because I totally forgot earlier in this episode, you went back and you read Interlude 3, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Any thoughts on the fucking, like, town jumping the gang?
It was very what happened to Bonnie and Clyde.
That's what it made me think
Bonnie
of,
and
too.
Clyde went down. It made me think of that so hard. Just shout out Last Pod. They have a great, like, 3-parter on Bonnie and Clyde. It's really interesting. we're not a true crime podcast. I don't get to cover that. That's why I'm shouting out someone else. If you want to hear that, but the real life version, listen to that. It was so good. The way that he wrote it, not just the Bonnie and Clyde thing. Maybe it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's literally what it made me think of. It also made me think of the way that he wrote Roland trying to get out of town.
Yeah.
At the beginning of The Gunslinger.
I'm sorry.
It's the guns. It's not me. I feel like
Just stay down.
Stephen King very much has a thing for, like, people kind of being possessed by something. I think we're starting to find out more of what that is. Like, is it that they are possessed by evil, or is it that they are possessed by Ka? Roland had to shoot out that town to need to sit with the one guy for however long and talk to him. Because he had to keep going like, well, don't you want to hear a story? I don't like to talk, but don't you want me to talk? That had to happen. You know, there had to be a violence.
Yeah.
Like, to beget violence, the wheel of Ka had to turn.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that evil is just as much a tool of Ka as good is. And we talk about that at the end of The Gunslinger. It's all, like, there really isn't a white and a black. There's just...
Gray.
Ka. Yeah. There's just Bob Gray.
There's just Bob Gray at the
Vote
end of it
Bob
all.
Gray. Like,
nothing but Bob Gray.
that sounds like such a politician name. Vote Bob Gray. Tell my wife I said hello. I know that's beige. It's same concept. Oh God! Last time we pulled the 10 of Cups, which told us to share joys with others, and then you made me talk about the Atlanta child murders. She didn't make me, but I feel like it's easier to blame it on somebody else.
Just think.
It's easier to blame my pain on Henry Bowers.
You're going to be in Switzerland soon.
I
That
know.
is your joy that you are sharing with others.
Technically, I'm already there. Let's see what's coming now. The 3 of Cups.
More cups. So the 3 is the card of friendship and camaraderie. It encourages a happy gathering with one's closest friends.
No! After that, no! Refuse.
The Losers Club is assembled.
Sorry.
And we are ready to venture forth for more shenanigans.
Which one is Captain America?
Belle.
Yeah, I don't know why I asked. I already knew when I asked it.
All right, so next time.
Mike, Doctor Strange.
Oh my God, he is kind of Doctor
Yeah,
Strange.
right?
Yeah, I can't argue with this. I'm here for it.
Beverly's Black Widow because there's only the one girl.
Superpowers kicking.
Richie's Iron Man because he's funny. Eddie's the Hulk because medicine is a superpower.
So for next time, we are going to finish up part 4. Part 4, we're still safe. The scene that's awful that we know about, that isn't like the dog scene where we didn't know about it, but the scene is in part 5, I believe. So we are safe for this next reading round. So finish part 4 if you are reading along with us and haven't just blown us out of the water because this is taking fucking forever.
Or he's been Iron Man because of the way he builds stuff. But what does that leave Richie?
Hawkeye.
No! Yeah! Oh, I hate it. I love it. I love it and I hate it. There are other worlds than these. Go find them. Okay, bye.
You can email us at miniconstantworlds@gmail.com, DM us on Instagram or TikTok, and hey, while you're there, maybe give us a follow. Love you, lobsters.